Well, I guess it's about time for us to begin. And as usual, we have a lot to discuss today. Um, and I was wondering if today was going to be different than other Zoom calls I've been on, not referring to the Capitol. But in fact, our first top story is that Trump's internet is celebrated. Apparently, the movement behind the coup delivered exactly what that movement has been promised on social media. So that'll be interesting to discuss that. In technology, and I suppose that's one way of putting it in technology, Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, is now the world's wealthiest person, outstripping Bezos and others. And materials, as always, is quite interesting. We've been investigating, or they have, I don't do much, a variety of living things to see how they might be used. And now, with fungus, they say it can be a sound absorber. Let's listen to that. And on space, would you like to go to Mars and make methane? Apparently, it's critical to do that, and it provides a way home. And apparently, and I know some people may be a bit dubious, but apparently global heating could stabilize if we now had net zero emissions. Can we do it? Let's try. In biology, and I know we tend to assume this can't be true, but maybe plants are aware, perhaps conscious. French green beans apparently show intent. What might that mean? And now for us, and it's a kind of thing that's really a favorite with Richard, but now meditation. Apparently, there's a guide to meditation that Netflix can deliver. Can we get enlightenment in 10 or 20 minutes?
That's something I didn't.
On medical stuff. Apparently, the first pig to human organ transplants could happen maybe this year. Does that mean we have no more waiting for transplants? We'll talk about that. So those are all the things we'll talk about today. And now, Richard, let's get on to the top story. What's this about Trump's internet having done, being celebrating because it did what it has promised? Richard.
Now, I guess this is the first time that Trump actually delivered what he's promised. And this story is about the fact that now the internet is real life. And we started to see that with the stories of Pizzagate a few years ago that ended up in some crazy guy carrying a rifle into a restaurant. And the thing is that before this riot happened last week, there has been this ongoing noise on the right-wing social media about their plans, and they had been planning it all out. A lot of people will end up being convicted because they were doing it publicly, and the information is then available to the authorities. But basically, the movement has done exactly what they promised. And they said they were going to go disrupt the proceedings, and they disrupted the proceedings. They didn't stop them, though, thanks to stupidity on their part and enormous bravery on the parts of some law enforcement people. But it's really just the latest, and in some ways the most alarming lesson in how online extremism can translate into violence on the street. And uh, so I felt like this article was appropriate for the time. Uh, and we have seen since this mainstream platforms like Netflix and Twitter have now thrown Trump off. There's still stuff on YouTube, so YouTube hasn't gotten the story yet. And the uh, it's kind of interesting in another way. There's this other right wing social media site Parler. And I don't know if you've heard about the story of that. That's where people were going to because Twitter was too restrictive. And so the right wing had really gravitated to Parler, and that's where a lot of the planning was done for the action on the 6th. Parler, since that, one of the things that's happened is Amazon, who is hosting it, says, we're not hosting you anymore, and they shut it down. And there were other you could go on your iPhone or your Google phone and go to the store and connect up with Parler. You can't do that anymore. And interestingly enough, I think Parler was created in a hurry with money from the Mercers, again, as a Twitter alternative. And when it was done, the developers did not take some of the basic care. And so Parler, with all of its right wing communications, then depended upon a third party security management app to manage their logins. When people shut Parler down, the third party shut the connection down, and there was Parler on its servers basically open to the world and without any particular heavy hacking skills, then people on our side have gone there and been able to record 99% of all of this stuff that was done on Parler's site. And this recording actually is interesting because Parler presents it a lot of information anonymously, but they still would tie it to the person's records. And here we have the data and nothing is anonymous anymore. And so maybe their internet stupidity will be a major tool to help FBI and the law enforcement put them all in jail. And Deutsche Bank announced yesterday that they're canceling Trump's account. I don't think they're calling in the loans yet, but that's definitely no more money for Trump. And I would say at the end of this, is it enough to put Trump into internet jail? Should we maybe do more? Anyway, up to you guys.
Okay, that's fascinating. Any comments?
Yes, definitely. He should be prevented to ever run for office again, and he should be prosecuted for all the things he has done in the past, which I know New York State will be able to prosecute him regardless whether he pardons himself or not. So he should be kept busy with that for the rest of his life, I hope.
Well, what about all the others? It wasn't Trump alone in this. There were other people in the military, in the police, in government, in Congress. Should we get all those guys too? Is that an overreaction?
I think we will, but it's good. This thing is going to go on for years. I mean, everybody who's had their picture taken at the, at the riot he's now going to be on a database, and they're going to kind of, they're going to be a marked man forever. If there's a knock on the door, they're never going to know, is this the FBI and are they coming for me?
That makes me happy, Clive.
But
One of the things I think
the bigger issue is that do we have to go like China and have the government in complete control? Because that way you could, stop it happening again. But maybe you should make another law that anything that gets published has to have the name, address, and full details about who's publishing it. And then that person stands to, kind of be brought to account. I think that would be a simple law to pass. I don't know whether anybody has got any ideas.
Well, there's one thing you have to realize is that this whole movement is a fascistic manifestation, which has been festering already since the beginning of last century, 1920s, and it flared up and became manifest in World War II, and the fascists were put down, at a great expense of human life and property, and it's been festering in the United States for a very long time. And Trump and the supporters are just that, fascists. And I heard Trump actually say that he was worried about the Antifa movement, and that those are a bunch of thugs that have to be put down. Well, I can see why he doesn't like Antifa, because they were the people that in World War II manned the underground and resistance movement, and also helped were very, very instrumental in winning World War II, even though they don't get any real credit for that. But this is a very, very strong movement. A lot of people like an autocratic regime, apparently, and so anyway, this is far more dangerous than I think many people realize.
Yeah, I was going to say that the corporate world also is taking action. The many American companies have stopped funding some of the people who, especially the politicians, they've already publicly announced they're not going to contribute anymore to Josh Hawley and others. And the company that owns the radio stations of all the right-wing stations,
Yes.
all those people have been told that they're going to cut off the funding and they won't be funding it anymore. So that has also helped. There is the First Amendment issue, which is freedom of speech. But these are all private entities and private social networks owned by private companies. So they can decide who they want and who they don't want. But I guess in the total public space, it will be hard to ban this kind of talk. If someone decides to do it in a park or on the street, I think First Amendment rights would protect them. But by and large, social media has been pressured by corporate interests as well.
You see, that's the danger of free speech. On the one hand, you can maybe silence movements like fascism, but at the same time, at the price of freedom of speech, they actually win, because that's exactly what they want.
Now, here, one of the things I think that's interesting, after the collapse of Parler, then there is another social networking system whose name I can't remember at the moment. It's 3 letters, and it gained 600,000 members Sunday as Parler was shutting down, and this one is actually more dangerous because in Parler had its database centralized, and that's what they were able to make a copy of. This one is operating like these file sharing systems where the data is distributed among all the people who use the system. And so this is very much more difficult than to stop than something like Parler that is one source for connections and one source for the data. So as always, when uh, one kind of weapon is created, a political weapon, and then stopped, like with Parler, then these creative guys figure out some other even nastier way to do it.
Right.
When they did that with music and everybody was file sharing, what killed that in the end was people didn't want to download viruses, and so that's why people stopped using it. So maybe it'll be the same with all this right-wing stuff.
Oh, hey, that's right. Then we have some of these left-wing hackers. We should have them attack it. I think its name is Gab. What a clever idea, Clive.
Now,
I wonder if Gab will make people put their licenses up. Isn't that what the other one did?
Yeah, to have them authenticate themselves. Now, they're not sure if within the 99% they got the pictures because they haven't evaluated that part of the data yet. The licenses are in their attached picture files.
And there are their addresses and
and social security numbers. And one of the things that was poorly done about Parler is this personal information in a credible system, then it's not written in the clear in the database. It's encrypted before you write it into the database. So to even be able to read the file, you have to have the encryption key. Parler wrote everything in the clear. So the people who got all of the information got a lot of personal information that could be used to hack their accounts and stuff like this.
now we could
I
talk
hope the
all day
FBI figured that out.
on the top
Yes.
story. And I don't know if we want to spend all of our time on the top story. I know it's so interesting. I wonder if we move on to technology. Now, the question is, why does having a particular person, Elon Musk, as the world's wealthiest person, how does that get into our technology story? What's this about for technology, the world's wealthiest person being Elon Musk? What's that about, Richard?
Well, to start with, it's about technology. The reason that he has so much money is technology, and he's one of the ones that has been a leader in terms of doing advanced things with technology. There's SpaceX, which is now the dominant supplier, the main supplier in the world for launch vehicles. And more importantly, Tesla. And Tesla had a real good year this year, even though everybody else had the pandemic. Tesla's sales continued to go up. Tesla was profitable every quarter, and Tesla has been breaking ground all over the world for new facilities. So they're continuing to invest in the future. And it turns out the stock market like that, and Elon Musk has more than 20% of the stock. The Tesla stock increased more than 700% in 2020. And the reason why Musk is now worth $185 billion is mainly because the Tesla stock is skyrocketing. And now, according to the capitalization, which is the number of shares times the market value, Tesla is now more valuable than the world's top automakers combined. So that is one of the things about technology is technology cycles for implementing and having the technology spread through the society are much faster. And Tesla's rise to riches is a living example of that speed.
It sounds like a bubble.
That's what you're waiting on, eh?
Well, actually, Elon Musk is a kind of a cult figure. And often that happens with these guys like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. The market factors in a lot of value into their potential future creativity, and the price to earnings ratios of their stocks tend to be very abnormally high. And sometimes it's like Andrew just said, it's hard to sustain it. For example, there's a Facebook, the Mark Zuckerberg doesn't get along with Elon Musk at all. The two don't get along at all. So Elon Musk promoted another Facebook competitor called Signal, saying that it provides better privacy protection. And in the last 1 week, 500 or 600 million people worldwide have moved from Facebook to Signal. And the stock of Signal has gone up like hundreds of times. So he can make markets just by uttering some stuff. And people seem to react to that. So I think because they assume he's a genius, but they project a lot of futuristic potential that may or may not come about. And so it could end up being a bubble as well.
Well, actually, Elon Musk is going to have competition from other companies, both GM and Ford. Ford has actually come out with an electric Mustang, which seemed to be very popular. And they're going to go heavy into EV vehicles. And the same is the case for General Motors. They're going to have a whole line of electric vehicles. So it's okay now, he's early, but there's going to be a lot of competition coming along.
Not to mention the Chinese, they're making electric vehicles at a third of
that. I was just going to say that. Chinese.
But in terms of Elon Musk and technology, one of the good things about the technology is that he's definitely a technical person, and that's just about the limit of his interests. I mean, he invests all of his money in technology, so it's going to make technology grow. He's not like some of the other really wealthy people in the world who use some of their incredible amount of wealth for philanthropic purposes. I haven't seen that with him.
And also about technology story, you have to understand part of the background is Jeff Bezos is the guy he replaced. Jeff Bezos got rich on Amazon, which is a company that combines technology and shopping and is the most effective in the world. And Bezos replaced Gates from Microsoft Software. And so for the last 20 years, the world's richest people have all been technology guys.
Yeah, well, that's where the future lies.
By the way, the Tesla stock dropped yesterday, and Elon Musk dropped to number 2 yesterday.
Okay.
Because of the market yesterday, Jeff Bezos was back on top.
Well, if we move along to materials, I normally don't think of living stuff as being materials, and yet people are investigating a lot of living things under materials to see how they might be used. And apparently fungus is one that they're now looking at as a sound absorber. Richard, what's that about?
So I think this is fascinating because this period that we're in is a period of real broad investigation of living things on the planet, and we're finding things that are pretty amazing that we can get from bacteria and from algae and now fungus. One of the things that I heard about that's not in this article is some company, I think Adidas or Reebok, is coming out with a line of shoes that are made from mushroom leather. That's connected to this story in a funny way. Anyway, there's a place, the Fraunhofer Institute in Europe has been doing significant investigation in the potential uses for fungus for mycelium. And the reason why is mycelium is made from all of these little fibers. And they think, gee, you must be able to do something with it. And what they have focused on is the use of it as a environmentally friendly sound absorber. You know, the sound, ambient sound does a lot of damage to people's health and psyches. And the sound absorbers really improve the acoustics in a room. And what they have done is they have made, instead of making the soundproofing panels out of materials that are not really good for the environment, they're making them out of 3D printed mycelium mixed with some, it looks like sawdust, straw, and waste from food production, and they print it into the desired shape and onto some substrate, and then they put it in the heat to kill all the virus, and they have this nice panel that is full of air pockets that is more effective than existing soundproofing. So you don't need as thick a panel, and it looks like that this is a new way to make sound deadening. These people also believe that from the mycelium, we're going to be able to get leather. That already is happening with shoes, fabric, and some alternate way to be able to make plastic. And so here, the fungus among us may contribute to our ecologically coherent future.
Any thoughts?
How does it react to moisture, I wonder? Richard?
Pardon?
I was wondering how it will, if it's inert, if it will respond to contact with moisture.
Don't know. They didn't talk about it there. They probably heard that it's going to get wet, though.
Yeah.
Is there any data on durability or life cycle or anything, like whether it lasts for 6 months or a year?
No, this is one article with that's based on some news release from these guys that are in the fungus business.
Okay.
So again, it's an alternate way. And one of the things that's going to happen in this century is we're going to find many useful materials from sources that are not traditional sources. And fungus, algae, and bacteria are big candidates for improving our future. Oh, I hear somebody, but I guess it's not involved in the conversation. Anyway,
Good. Okay, then, moving along. Richard, why do we want to make methane on Mars?
well, why not? It turns out that the the deadly greenhouse gas methane could be useful on Mars, because once you get to Mars, what you would like to do, or at least some of them would like to do, is get back. And uh, presently, the most common fuel for these big rockets is liquid hydrogen. And it turns out liquid hydrogen is not a good solution to send rockets to Mars, because every time you fire them up, the rockets get all coated with carbon and stuff like that. And you have to clean the rockets in between the use. And the rocket cleaning facilities on Mars are not very good yet. And so Elon Musk, our buddy Elon Musk, is somebody who has seen the future, and the kind of rocket that he is building for his spaceships that will take 100 people to Mars, then he's planning on using methane. And because you can use methane and it doesn't crap up the jets. So the problem with using methane on Mars is, where do you get it? And there's a way to use catalytic reactions to generate methane. Presently, that was not a good solution until these guys had their development, because the conversion took two steps. And first you have to take whatever it is you're working with, probably water, and convert it to hydrogen, and then use another catalytic action to convert the hydrogen into methane. Here they're using some new zinc catalyst that is very efficient, and it's a one-step process to make methane out of, it must be water. They don't say what the initial stuff is they use, but it has to be water. They say it's from material they can find on Mars. And so with this catalyst, once we get to Mars, we can make enough fuel to get back. So that's what the story is. I also suspect, by the way, a more efficient catalyst will be of use on this planet, because we might like to take water and turn water into something useful.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Just that it seems strange they worry about carbon soot in hydrogen powered rockets,
I
because
wondered about that too.
there's no carbon coming from anywhere.
I,
And the typical way of making hydrogen is to use a methane steam reformer. And you basically combine methane with water to make hydrogen and carbon dioxide. So strange.
well, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I wondered also what you said about, how does hydrogen crap up the nozzle with carbon residue, but because they are doing this, it must, because they're not just making it up.
No.
Other comments?
Well, the other thing that they talk about when colonizing Mars is Mars hasn't the same magnetic fields that the Earth has that protect us from cosmic rays. And they'd have to figure out some way to protect the colonists from cosmic rays that would cause a lot of problems.
That's right. I hadn't thought about that, but you're certainly right. Now, maybe in the sci-fi I read, one common theme of Mars colonization was them in some kind of bubble or something. So we have to have the habitats in a bubble of things that filter out the harmful radiation.
Yeah, sort of a Faraday cage for
That's right.
cosmic.
A clear one so we can see the sunrise.
Yeah.
I think we should take advantage of the volunteers who don't care whether they come back or not. You know, like,
That's
That makes it an easier problem.
yeah.
Do you want to come back, Clive?
I don't want to go.
You could send Trump and his followers there.
Oh, like the colonized Australia, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, same idea.
Moving on to the environment. For some time, we've been hearing scientists and so on say we should do something about emissions, but just realize that so much has been baked in and it's going to happen no matter what. And this story says, well, maybe not. Maybe we could stabilize global heating if we were able to get emissions down to zero. What's that about? And can we do it?
Well, this is for me, one of the more encouraging stories that's come across about the environment and global heating. And it's been now a very careful study was made considering all we know about ocean dynamics and dynamics of the atmosphere and planet and heating and all of this stuff. And the scientists who did this study say that this pledge to get net zero by 2050, that if this is done seriously and done across the planet, then we will, the surface temperatures will stop rising as soon as we stop putting all this crap in the atmosphere, and then warming will stabilize within 20 years. So it's still not wonderful, but it is not the story of doom and gloom that we have been hearing elsewhere. So that if we get to the point where we are at net zero and it stops the heating, then this is going to give civilization time to adjust to the changes and figure out how to put some of these technologies online to then start pulling the carbon out of the atmosphere and resetting the planet to the way it was.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, there's quite an interesting program on Netflix right now called Kiss the Soil.
Oh, yes,
And-
I saw that.
It's about the carbon cycle and how important carbon is in everything that we do. And the main argument is that our Western agricultural methods have dumped a lot of carbon into the atmosphere and impoverished the soil as a result. And if we adopted more responsible agricultural methods, we could reverse the CO2 increase in the atmosphere in just a decade. And
Right.
it's really worth listening to because it does make a lot of sense. And the real goofy thing is that right now the US government subsidizes industrial agriculture, I think $25 billion a year that actually contributes to this CO2 rise in the atmosphere.
And I also saw that Netflix show. Can you tell us its name again? Because I can't remember.
It's called Kiss the Soil.
And it's very worthwhile. And what they're talking about, they call it regenerative agriculture. And what they're regenerating is the soil. And
Correct.
to me, for a long time, I have thought that the farmers who are the most advanced are those whose approach is first you grow good soil, then the good plants grow naturally in it. And they're
Yeah.
doing that for real. One of the things they had that amazed me that I saw is they have a planter that will automatically plant the seeds without tilling the soil. So it just has pokes a hole in the ground and drops the seed through the plants that are on the soil, and maintaining the ecosystem while growing food.
Yeah, that's a zero tillage.
Yes.
That's quite a big deal in Western Canada. They call it no-till.
Okay.
They have machines that put the seed in, and you
Yes.
don't the soil. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
On a related comment, it's not directly related to your story, but the bulk of the carbon dioxide I used to assume was removed by the tropical rainforest. But I recently read that that's only 1/3 of the carbon dioxide. The bulk of it is taken away by the plankton on the ocean surface.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, humans are damaging the oceans as well by dumping millions of tons of plastic and sewage and stuff like that. But the ocean also could capture a lot of that carbon dioxide. We've just undermined ourselves as a species by damaging the plankton surface on the ocean, on the 5 oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we move on from talking about emissions and from soil to what's in the soil, plants. And something says maybe plants are aware. Are they conscious? Apparently, French green beans show intent. What might this mean? Richard.
Now, I wanted to include this story for several reasons. One of the reasons is consciousness. We don't know what's going on with consciousness, and the people who are the plant researchers mainly, they know that plants move with the sun and stuff like this, but they can't find a nervous system. So they say, how can plants be conscious and aware? Somehow they're able to do this stuff, but there's no consciousness, no intelligence, nothing directing activity. Not all of the people who are plant scientists have this attitude, though, and some of the people who think maybe plants have more capabilities did some research. And what they did was they took green beans, 20 green beans in pots, and they put them around, and in some of the green beans near them had a pole. And they were interested because, these green beans, if there are poles around, the green beans find them and they go up the pole. And they wanted to study it carefully. And so they took all this film of the green beans with the poles and without the poles, and they watched how they grew, and then came back and reviewed all the video, and they concluded that the movement of the plants towards the pole was not random. It was not the random, we're putting out shoots all of these places, and the shoots that find the pole are the ones that survive. It wasn't like that. And because it wasn't random, then they interpreted that as the plants were showing intent. They wanted to get to that pole. They knew it was around somewhere and they wanted to get to it. And it's just fascinating. We don't know what is going on with plants, and maybe there is more going on than we know.
Thoughts?
Well, I think that plants are a combination of various cells, and whether they have a conscience or not, they all are intent to live and thrive. And so for that, they need water and some nutrients to get out of the soil. They also need light, sunlight, not necessarily direct sunlight. And so if plants require more sunlight to thrive, they would find that if they climb up something or another. So rather than they're consciously looking for poles, I mean, if you were to plant some of these, I would imagine in the field without any trees or poles or anything, they would probably just die. But anyway, but this is why it's not a matter of conscience. They just want to live, and that's what they're geared for. So it's a cellular response to the environment is, I think, what I'm trying to say.
Any other thoughts?
Let me just relay one other story out of my own background. When I was in Silicon Valley, I was kind of indirectly connected to a guy named Hal Puthoff. And there were three things about him. He was a Stanford professor. He was a Scientologist, and he also wrote a book, The Secret Life of Plants. And perhaps some of you heard of it. It was published maybe 40 years ago. And one of the things he wrote about was an experiment he did. The key technique device in Scientology was what they call an E-meter, which is basically a voltage meter, a galvanometer. And so what he did is he made a special setup, and on the outside of the setup, he had plants that he had hooked up to E-meters, galvanometers, looking at the voltage on the surface of the plants. And then he had a central room that was thick lead, so no radiation could get through it. And in the center of this room, he had a pot with boiling water and a random timer that would dump live brine shrimp into the boiling water. And what he says is every time you dumped the brine shrimp into the water, he saw all this heavy reaction on the E-meter from the plants outside. So he was arguing plants have a very different awareness than we think of. And he tried to do to show it in a proof. Nobody picked up on his science though, so that's all I've heard about it.
Richard, I'm interested that there apparently is a new branch, perhaps of science or philosophy, that wants to go a little bit beyond that. It's saying traditionally people have said, how do you get from inanimate life, inanimate matter to life? And people are saying, well, maybe we don't understand what inanimate matter is. Maybe there's something approaching life in the very stuff of matter.
Uh-huh.
And the big gap is between having matter or not matter, rather than between having inanimate matter and life.
Connected to that, there's also the question of once you have life, how does life become conscious? How does this stuff that is inert then become knowing?
Yeah.
And we don't know yet. Some crazy people like me think that it's probably because consciousness is the universe.
Now, maybe if we're going to talk about you and things, we maybe should move on to the next thing that precisely is where you're at, on
That's right.
Netflix and meditation and enlightenment in 20 minutes. What's that about?
Now, you all know that I have been meditating seriously for a very long time. And anyway, so I thought this story would be a good story for our human side. And Netflix now has a new show. And the new show is 8 20-minute episodes that are designed to teach you how to meditate and give you meditation practice. And it's done, the speaker is Andy Pudicom, and he is trying to do for meditation what Jamie Oliver did for food, to really make it a much more popular subject. So this series is very well produced, and each episode gives you basically 10 minutes of instruction and 10 minutes of practice. And while you're having your meditation practice, there's good video and visuals and stuff like this to keep you amused while you meditate. To be amused, you probably have to meditate with your eyes open. But this particular guy in his 20s got interested in meditation, ended up going to Tibet. He spent 10 years in a Buddhist monastery, and after 10 years of practice, he was ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist monk. And what he is saying now is, you don't have to go to the Himalayas, just watch my show. I've watched the first one, and it's very credible. I have a meditation group where I'm providing instruction, and I'll tell them all to watch the show.
Richard, what's the name of the show?
I'm trying to find it.
It's called Headspace.
Headspace, okay.
Oh, Headspace, okay.
Headspace Guide to Meditation.
All right, thank you.
And as I say, it's very well done, very worthwhile. Meditation, again, has shown that it has all the beneficial effects, but it's only if you do it regularly. And this is trying to work on people doing it regularly. In my meditation classes, Diane can speak to this. I would nag people about meditating regularly, and in the sessions I have, just to embarrass everybody publicly, I ask them each time, well, how was your meditation last week? And so it's all designed to provide encouragement.
Any
Now
other
I can
comments?
have them watch
Are you
Netflix.
meditating?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
appreciate your
Yeah.
evaluation and recommendation, because, you know, you do hear an awful lot from different people with different perspectives. And it's just nice to have yours.
Yeah, anyway, the Headspace Guide, I think, is very worthwhile.
Other thoughts?
Just that meditation is a good way to help people accept reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
some
not
of
have
it
it bum them out.
Yeah, that was sort of a Buddhist thing, is just to accept the suffering that is reality.
Right, just let it be conscious of it when it's there. Don't be attached to it and let it go when it passes. It all passes. What doesn't
So,
pass is the awareness you have.
so our last story on health is maybe the first pig to human organ transplants are about to happen. And does that maybe mean we don't have to wait a long time for transplants? Richard, tell us about it.
Well, like it said in the article, 17 people die a day waiting for organs, and they've been trying to work with animals for some time. In the 80s, they transplanted a baboon or a some kind of higher primate, a gorilla or ape, into a human that had trouble, and it worked for a few weeks, and then they got rejected and the person died. So that's not a good solution. And they've been looking particularly at pigs. I guess pigs are easy to grow, and after you're through with the transplant, you can have ribs or something.
Bacon.
Or you can barbecue ribs anyway. And the so they've been working on this for about a decade. And the first thing they had to do was, on the surface of pig cells, there's a kind of sugar-like coating that the human immune system reacts to negatively. And so they created a genetically modified pig that was actually approved by the FDA for use in feeding people and medical use. And uh, the pig does not have this surface sugar, so it has fewer of the rejection problems. That wasn't enough, though. And then in the subsequent few years, they have done 10 more genetic modifications of these pigs, and 4 was to remove some genetic aspect that caused immune reactions in people, and 6 of them were inserting some human genes. And so I'm not sure what human genes are in the pig, and I'm not sure what having human genes in pigs would do to somebody who didn't want to be a cannibal, but that's another story. Uh, and anyway, they believe that these additional gene modifications that they have done have made pig organs suitable for use in humans, and they believe that sometime this year or maybe next, but they really think this year they will do the first transplant from pig to human. First, they're working on kidneys. There's an immense backlog of kidneys that are needed. And first, they're going to work on kidneys. And then after that, they have something for you, Fred. They're going to start, they believe the next target is human hearts, pig hearts for people that need a heart. I guess for people who
Okay.
need a heart who are not Muslim.
I have something to say on the subject. They've been doing it for a number of years. That's what my husband had, Sheldon, and I know some of you knew him. And when he died, he did not die of heart trouble, but he had a pig valve put
Right.
in, and he never had any problem with that. In fact, he really never had any more heart problems after he had that operation. So yeah, they've been working with this, and it's been successful with at least that heart valve.
Yeah, the heart valve that they put in is basically, I believe, not living tissue because you don't need it for the valve, but this will be living tissue. And you know, the fact that they could do this with heart valves and things like this encourages them.
Yeah.
I think even in the early days for diabetics, the pancreas, the injections they make, the insulin came from pigs before they learned how to make it synthetically.
Ah, okay.
They extracted it from pig pancreas.
So maybe we can get pig pancreases back for the diabetics.
There you go, yeah.
You know, there are a lot of diabetics. There are, I don't know, in the world, 100 million or something like that. It's a big number. So it's a big market for pig pancreases.
Yeah,
Please.
probably a bigger one for hearts.
Well, Richard, thanks a lot. And thanks to everybody for participating. And we'll be seeing you in a week's time. Everybody knows that inauguration is about that time. But anyway, in a week's time. All the best.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Fred.
you.
Thanks, Richard.
See you in a week.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I know.